Hello and welcome to another episode of Soul Nectar Show, that show where we talk about all things essence, where we gather around the campfire and we share our stories of connection to that which is bigger than us, to the great mystery, to the multi-dimensions, to the spiritual inspirations and just synchronistic events that happen on this path when you start to unfold to it. And I love these conversations that I get to have on this show. I'm your host, Carrie Hummingbird. And I really enjoy deep, profound ocean waters of conversation and topic that expand our minds and expand our understanding about who we are and what we came here to do. And I love helping people guide through that first part of the process themselves. So if you're out there and you're like, you know what, I think I'm ready to open that door now. I'm really done with regular reality. Well, look me up and come to the website, carriehummingbird.com, and check out Butterfly Circle, Reinvent Yourself, and let's have a chat. So today's guest is going to be really interesting because Sam Harris is with us, and Sam has launched many businesses. He's otherwise known as a serial entrepreneur. He's traveled the world. He's nearly died a few times, and all in the spirit of curiosity and adventure. And some highlights include touring North Korea to hitchhike across Kazakhstan. And he brings his insatiable appetite for learning to the Growth Mindset podcast, which I'll also be on very soon, and challenges his guests with unusual questions to bring listeners unique insights. He recently also did a TEDx talk about getting good balance with technology, and don't we need that? So welcome, Sam, to the show.
Thank you very much.
I'm glad you're here. So
Yeah, me too.
I really, so everybody's really curious. You said something to me as we were just initially chatting about being without technology and being naked for a period of days. And I would love to know more about that as your introduction to like your spiritual journey.
Yeah, it's have you ever heard of rainbow festivals?
No, well,
It's very, I think you would like them. There's always one happening somewhere, but they follow the moon cycle, and they're once a month, and they last for the whole thing. And it's basically completely free, and you go and there's just like a bunch of other hippies, and you kind of just live in this community in a forest somewhere, and you're not allowed any technology, and you don't have to have no clothes, but you can be nudist if you feel like it, and you kind of just exist in like this experiment in living and trying things in a completely different way. And it's really nice. People always ask you, what the hell do you do for like 3 weeks or a month without any technology and nothing to do? And you're like, well, there's always stuff to do. Like every morning someone sort of proposes doing some things like massage workshops or like yoga, and I learned to juggle. I played a lot of guitar and went swimming in the river and things. And you just do lots of stuff, and you fill your day and you read books, and everyone just becomes really creative, and everyone's just very present as well. Because every time you're about to do something, then there's no moment where you can get your phone out to like stop you from being present, kind of thing. If you're waiting for something to start, you just talk to whoever you're next to, and there's no like reason to not to talk to someone, so you just do. It's very nice. And it was just super relaxing, and yeah, really nice way to kind of exist. And when you come back to the reality that we currently inhabit with like cities and things, and you're kind of there, and it's just very strange looking at people that you kind of perceive as like slightly better than normal apes, apart from they're just kind of being sort of pulled around everywhere by their phone that seems to be glued to their face, and you're like, what the hell is going on? It's just very like surreal to come back.
yeah. Well, what you just described is sort of like my childhood because I'm 50, right? And we didn't have cell phones when I was a kid. We didn't have a cell phones. I think I didn't have one until I was maybe in my early 20s before I had a cell phone. So all of this time I had without a cell phone. And now that I have one, I wonder how I would live without it.
Mm,
But you're reminding us, like how would you live with
yeah,
it
yeah, it
if it
seems
went
kind of
down?
weird.
You would
Mm.
just, you would go back to the way it was before we had technology.
Yeah, as in like people now get like panic attacks if they leave the house without their phone or something, and you're like, I I drove around the whole of America without a phone 10 years ago, and like I didn't even have a sat nav. I had a compass and it didn't work, and then I still managed it. And like now I'm completely incapable of doing these things. And you're like, how did I lose their skills so quickly? And like all of humanity before me managed it okay. And
Yeah, all of
oh my God.
humanity. That's such a great perspective. You know what my dad and my used to force me to do when I was in high school on the
No.
weekends?
I could guess.
sail.
I'll let you go for it.
I was on a sailboat, a 24-foot sailboat with my dad and my mom with books on a
Nice.
sailboat all weekend at
Yeah.
17. And boy, that was some close time. And what
Hmm.
we would do is we'd play cards. We'd play gin rummy. Do you guys know how to play gin rummy out there? Does anybody know how to play gin rummy without a computer, like with actual cards? Because it's really fun to just
Hmm.
play a game with your family, looking at each other and, at a table together
Yeah.
without a
Yeah, I
phone.
hope like that happens a bit more with the whole corona crisis, that people kind of stuck in and there's nothing else to go and do besides. I mean, you're still on your technology, but like it's great to not use it the whole time, and there's so much opportunity to kind of engage with your family a bit more whilst you are stuck around them for a long time and need to entertain yourselves. I think it's good,
Talk a little
essentially.
bit more about that process that you went through disengaging from technology when you went on this rainbow festival for a month and had to actually look at people. Like if you didn't have the shield of your phone, like
Mm.
oh, I'm busy, or like
Yeah, it's
what are
like
some of the things that you realize that that phone gives you?
it kind of gives you instant access to distraction, or it stops you from dealing with discomfort. So every time you have like a little discomfort, you instantly solve it with your phone. So if you are like waiting in a line or something and you've got like 30 seconds of boredom, you just get your phone out. Or if you sort of near some people that you should probably talk to, but you're not sure, you're a bit scared, like you get your phone out to see if maybe they'll talk to you first or something, and then they don't. And then like you kind of, you just don't do the slightly scary things. But suddenly when you don't have your phone there, there's nothing to protect you. You're kind of technology naked as well as sort of literally, and you're just like, oh well, if I don't do this it won't happen, I have to do it, and I can't just stand here looking like a lemon and say nothing, because you're just standing there doing nothing, whereas your phone, you can stand there and like do nothing but it looks like you're not doing nothing. So you kind of, you have to do something. If you wanted to actually talk to someone, you just talk to them, kind of thing. And so it just makes you do the things that you should be doing,
So
which
in a
is
way, like
quite
the
cool.
phone gives you a feeling of self-importance.
Yeah,
Like
and
somebody
safety and
wants
like
me, like they're
protection.
on the phone, or like I
Mm,
got another like, so like somebody cares. I fall into this trap. As a podcast
definitely.
person, I know you understand this. Like fall into this trap of like looking and see how many people like listen to the episode, or how many
Mm,
people liked the post, or how many people, and all these ratings. And I finally just stopped paying attention to it, because when I got into this podcast thing, my intention was to follow spirit, was just to heed the call to like get
mm,
messages out there and have conversations with people that had good hearts, right? And
mm.
then it started to get a little twisted for a moment into like, oh, who's got a big enough audience? Because people started asking me like, well, what's your audience, and how big is your audience, and how big is how many people listen, and all this kind of stuff, because I'll decide if I want to have you on my show based on like how many people listen to you. And it got icky for a little while. And then I decided, you know what? I don't care. If I
Mm.
like somebody and I find them interesting and I'm having a good conversation, I'm going to put them on my show. I don't care if they've
Yeah,
got like,
exactly.
I don't care about that.
Yeah, I definitely, yeah, I had the same thing. As in, I could get a lot more listeners if I only focused on just like stupidly successful rich people. But then I'm much more interested in like the happiest people that I meet and the people that are just super present. And I have interviewed some people that like are complete nobodies, but they were just suspiciously happy. And you're like, there's something you've got right, and I don't know what it is. And like, it's just great to interview them and find out, because I mean, the goal of life isn't money. You earn money to try and make yourself happy, but you can often like not be happy at the end of it. So it's much more important to have happy people than it is rich people, I figured. So yeah, it
Yeah,
seems a bit silly.
happiness being like the new currency, right? The new
Mm,
currency worth tracking.
exactly. It's hard to have like a happiness bank account, but that is one way to. I have heard that as an analogy, as in thinking of ways to add your like happiness bank account, or like maybe you're in like default credit or something and doing all the wrong things and stuff. Um, but yeah. Anyway,
So
a
how do you
tangent I can't
sit,
quite work out.
how do you move through that initial discomfort? Like you, I think you're right. It's only like about 30 seconds of discomfort. Like it's really not that much.
Mm,
Like if you walk up to a new group of people and they're looking at you, it's it's like less than 10 seconds of discomfort to just stay
yeah.
present and be witnessed.
Yeah, if you sort of say, "Oh, hi, I'm Sam," come what you guys doing? And like that's all it takes. It's not hard, and you can just stand there for like minutes just being a lemon on your phone, but sort of not feeling too bad about it, and then just never actually quite get involved and stuff. And yeah, silly. What was the question exactly? How do you do it? What?
Yeah. So, well, you just explained it, how you did it.
Okay, good.
So that's such an
Yeah.
interesting experiment that you went through, because I feel like this is really, we've gotten into this place where everybody's got their personal assistant, their
Mm.
phone that,
Well, it's not.
this is
It's
my
also like a
friend.
personal distraction device kind of thing. As in, it definitely ruins your attention span. And if you're trying to, if you've got like, if you need to sort of write a book or something, you need to kind of get into it for a few hours. But it's sort of you need to get your head in the right place. But before you start, you're like, well, I'll check my phone because of you're a bit unsure and you feel like a bit unsure what to do. But like when you're on your phone, you always feel productive. You're doing stuff. You're like you're hitting your like button. You're dealing with these things that are always there. And you're sending emails, whatever. So you feel productive when actually you're being less productive than doing like the important hard thing. Or then when you are writing your book for a bit, if you get a bit stuck, it's like you start feeling unproductive again. And you have this device right next to you which will make you feel productive instantly. So you start being productive even though you're not doing the thing you need to do. So it's really bad in life if you want to actually be effective and do useful stuff.
But now, interestingly enough, with this coronavirus quarantine, which, we're filming this and it's March 28th for everybody out there. But you're not going to be seeing it in March 28th. You're going to be seeing it in July. But this is when Sam and I are connecting and having this conversation. So what's really interesting is that we're in this moment right now, in this bubble of time,
Mm,
where this actually is your only connection outside of your house if you're alone. This might be
mm,
your only connection to another person.
yeah.
That's trippy, right?
Mm, kind of worrying. It's so as in I certainly like some people are like, oh, throw your phone in the bin and like never have one. But I'm definitely more of like everything in moderations and it's super useful. Like it's an amazing piece of technology. It's a great thing to have. It's just use it wisely rather than let it use you kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And this is really what you're advocating about in your TED Talk, right? About
Mm.
about being mindful with technology. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. Well, I draw a nice curve whereby uh this is gonna go wrong. But essentially you have like a bell curve of if you if you don't use technology at all, well, if you consider the up axis like the amount of ideas that you have, if you never like have any technology and you don't listen to any podcast, you don't learn anything, you're not really very effective. You don't really engage with society. You're not useful. So you're very ineffective. If you spend all of your time on your phone just constantly listening to other people's thoughts, you never have any time for your own thoughts. You don't have ideas yourself. You don't contribute. You're just constantly just consuming other things. So again, you do
Mhm.
nothing. So what you want is like a balance somewhere in the middle where you actually have ideas and things and you're useful. So you have like either of these ends of the bell curve. And so we can summarize don't be a bell end, which is a British term for someone who's a penis and is really annoying. But it makes a double point at the same time. But basically, yeah, so then try and be somewhere in the middle and have like a useful relationship. So as in like I'm a podcast and I love podcasts and I listen to them a lot as well. But I don't just and like I don't spend every single moment that I'm walking along or like doing the cooking. I don't just constantly fill my brain with other people's podcasts the whole time because that's just other people's thoughts, other people's conversations going on in my head. That's none of my own thoughts, none of my own conversations. And so after I finish the podcast, I don't let the next one start. I press stop, then I'll talk to myself, which apparently is a sign of craziness, but it's
Or
really interesting.
sanity.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's more sane because I think it's listening to other people's thoughts is much weirder than listening to your own for a bit. And so, like, I talk about what I just learned in the podcast, and I'll discuss what you could maybe change in it, what would make it better, what wasn't discussed, and like what actions maybe I should take from this podcast. So, like, I have some of my own ideas. It's your own ideas that you actually remember, not someone else's. So, I actually do something with the information that just went into my head instead of just drowning it in the next podcast kind of thing. So,
Yeah, well, in
yeah.
my world, we call that integration. It's like you're integrating the information, and which means it's sort of like you're consuming it. So when you consume something in physical reality, when you consume something, it goes into your belly and like you're eating it, right? Like your belly
Mm.
starts, your stomach starts to process it. Well, a lot of people skip that part when it's information going into their brains. So
Yeah,
they don't
exactly.
ever do the consumption part, like the actual, like breaking down the nutrients and taking out the bits that worked and,
Yeah, yeah,
excreting the stuff that doesn't work. Like you've
mm,
got to integrate it. And this is why people can't sleep, because their nighttime is being used for integration of all the deluge of information that comes in through their brain and through their eyes and into their brain, because they
mm.
never give a pause to let
Yeah,
something
definitely.
integrate. So the guy has to happen at night, and the only time that they're shutting up is when they're going to sleep. So
Doesn't help at all.
the busy
And then when you're not
brain.
sleeping, you don't have good memory formation either. So it's just a cycle of awfulness.
So what do
Yeah.
you think the main challenge is for your generation? Because your generation's had, you guys have had like technology since the beginning. Like you showed
Well,
up with it.
I
Like,
we did get a computer when I was about 5 or 6, but that was very early. So I was born in 1990. So World Wide Web came along just after that. But I don't know. I guess like all my friends had TV and computer games and things, but I didn't have a PlayStation or a TV or anything. So I kind of live in the middle of nowhere also.
you were
Um,
deprived.
yeah, I don't know. At the time, I was pretty sad about it, but in hindsight, I think it maybe it's a good thing because I really can't watch too much TV in a day. Whereas, like, I have friends that just can lose their entire day just watching TV, and it's just I just can't compute. Like,
That's kind
yeah,
of like the same thing with the podcast. Like everything is
mm,
outside of you and you're just consuming,
yeah, exactly.
like you're a spectator in life. Like when you go to a football game, if you ever do that, or
Mm,
a soccer game or something, the players are actually in the game. Like they're
yeah,
playing the
exactly.
game and they're like in motion with the divine, that the gift that they have flowing through them, and we're all entranced by watching them play the game. But you're in the stadium watching them play. You're not playing the game. You're just
Yeah,
spectating.
exactly. It's how I feel.
That's what TV is. It's just
Mm,
spectators. It's you're just sitting there watching. Armchair quarterback.
yeah, yeah. I'm definitely been more of a player than a spectator. But, I mean, it's interesting on some things, but yeah, I kind of just want to get involved with everything and change things and stuff. And like when you have opinions of things you want to change, there's no point in having an opinion. I feel is in like unless you're actually going to do something about it. Otherwise, it's sort of like if you get annoyed about the weather, just like move country or stop complaining. Otherwise, you just have a life of complaining. This kind of thing, and it's the same about anything else in society, I guess.
Yeah, the complaining part.
Mm.
That
And
a lot of people complain, right? And then they just
yeah,
kind of leave. But so like your generation's known for, sort of taking off and like, I don't like this, so I'm going to quit,
yeah,
or
we were well. I mean, it's depends on how you paint, well, how you describe my history of like, oh, so I've run loads of businesses, I've been to so many countries, I've done all these amazing things. Or it could just be like I'm just super incapable of sticking to anything and just a bit useless. It's glass half full, glass half empty, I guess.
so
Um,
how did you get to 70 countries? Like what led you
50
across
or over 50. But
over?
I don't know. Well, when I was 18, I had a gap year. I like cycled the length of Britain, then I went around Europe, and then I went to the Caribbean. I got like a one-way ticket to meet some guy on the internet who turns out did sort of slightly abuse me. I had to run away, but I didn't tell my mum and kind of just went to some different marinas and sort of tried to find work and ended up getting paid to just sail around the Caribbean, which is sweet. And yeah, so I did that for a bit. Then I went to Canada and then drove around the States and then went around South America. And that kind of, yeah, so that year sort of made me a bit more of a travel person afterwards, I guess. And then since then, I haven't done so much like, I don't really like just visiting countries just for the sake of visiting the country. I like more kind of visiting cultures kind of thing and spending like a month or a few months actually understanding it. Um, so I'm not so bothered about like tourist attractions as I am like learning about people and getting involved in things. So I've lived in a few, like lived in Israel and Mexico. Where else have I lived? I lived in 5 countries, but I can't remember. Anyway, but yeah, I've tried to do so. Since then, when I hitchhiked across Kazakhstan, I was going to start a business in Hong Kong, but I realized I could take a flight to one side of Kazakhstan, hitchhike for a few weeks, to then take another flight before I got to Hong Kong because I was like, oh, maybe I won't have time to like do so much silly travel after this. So that was fun. But then for strange reasons, that business kind of went south. And so I was kind of just in Asia and figured, well, if I'm in Asia, I don't want to just go straight home to UK. So I kind of stayed in Asia for a while and just went to like a load of different countries for like a few weeks or a month at a time and made the most of that. And went to Tasmania and did like the naked thing. And yeah, went to India, did like the silent meditating Vipassana stuff and tried to make the most of being in Asia rather than just sort of leaving the opportunity instantly. So yeah, I mean, it's confusing. I
Well,
don't
no, but
sort
it
of,
sounds like you got led from one thing to the next. Is that how it happened?
mm, yeah, definitely, I guess. Sort of
So
making the most of opportunities whilst they're there rather than letting them pass you by.
a lot
Because
of people try to control things. Like a lot of people
yeah,
try, they say, "Oh, I can't do that. That's way too free because I wouldn't know what might happen," and they get caught up in some fear. So how do you avoid all those traps? What's different in your psychology that lets you
mm,
just flow with things like that?
I don't know. I guess some sort of, I've had like a few moments where, so when I was in Paraguay, we were arrested like unlawfully, and then out of the two of us, right, they kind of beat us a bit, trying to get money out of us, and then they started threatening to rape us. But like, out of me and my friend, it was going to be me that got raped, which my friend will definitely testify to. And uh, somehow it ended up okay, and we got to Argentina instead, and life was fine. But after things like that, you sort of like actually when things go completely wrong and you can't even see when it become good, it kind of does, and it kind of gets you a bit more excited for putting yourself into sort of dangerous situations because of you sort of get to know that you don't even need to see the end of the tunnel. You can just get excited that there is one, and you kind of almost like excited for like, oh, I wonder how this story will work out because you can't even see how, but you kind of know that it will. So you just appreciate the moment of like terror for what it is, and like, well, I'm not going to be this terrified again anytime soon, so I'll like be excited for it. And yeah, I guess that sort of makes you a bit more keen to try things. So then when I was in Asia later, I was with a friend, but the three most important things I did whilst I was there was like going to North Korea, the Vipassana meditation, and the Tasmania naked with the hippies. And my friend didn't come to North Korea or the meditation with me, and it took me a lot of persuasion to make him go to the Tasmania thing, and that was the best thing that he did there. And the other two things are things I talk about the most out of the whole trip, and yet he didn't come because he was too scared. And you're like, well, it's the things that scare you that give you the most back, I found. And it's definitely confronting your fears gives you so much more than sort of being like, oh, well, maybe when I'm old, I'll wish I did that, but right now I'm a bit scared. It's like, well, now's the time that you have to do it, kind of thing. And yeah, I guess I just learned that scary, hard things are the best things to do, usually.
You know, that's so interesting you said that because you know, the coronavirus thing really kicked up about a week and a half, 2 weeks
Mm,
ago, right? In
yes.
this timeline that we're in right now. Of course, everybody's watching
Mm,
this later, but like right before it started, and I was supposed to go to pilgrimage in Mexico as part of my spiritual practice, and my teachers canceled.
yeah.
And my husband and I looked at each other and we're like, we both feel like we're supposed to go. And we felt really strongly like we were
Mm,
supposed to still go, even without our teachers. And we'd already planned to go to Teotihuacan, which is a very short distance from where the group was going to be meeting. We'd already planned that part anyway to leave early and go do that. So we just said, you know what, we're going to go.
mm,
And there was all this fear because the morning I woke up and it was like 4 in the morning. We were going to have to drive to the airport. And I looked at my husband. I said, are you sure we're going to go do this? Are you sure we're going to go do this? Are we really going to do this all by ourselves? You know, I'm 50, you know, so
mm,
I'm like a mom and everything. So I have all this like responsibility that starts to lay in your shoulders a bit when you get older. Like you have responsibility and you're like, oh, I'm now responsible for other people. I have to stay around. But we said, no, we're going to go. And it was the best thing. It was amazing. Like we still did our ceremony. Everybody else did their ceremony stateside. We still did our ceremony and it all worked. Everything worked just fine. Just us together in this
nice.
sacred place, opening ceremony and having ceremony and just feel all the energies and everything. It was perfect. And there wasn't any reason to fear.
Mm. Yeah, cool. Well, I
I
mean,
call that an initiation. It's
yeah, yeah.
like it's an initiation of fear. Like, are you going to step through the fear and do the thing anyway?
Mm, definitely. Yeah. So it's sort of learning to confront your fears. Then there's usually so much more upside on the other side of doing the things that scare you, rather than just sort of living within the walls of them. I guess, which is kind of relates to what I was talking about with technologies. And your phone is kind of like a thing that when you're scared of like doing the hard thing, it's like it's there to like it's like an easy option for you. But like on the other side of just sitting down for 2 hours with your book that you're finding hard to write is the benefit of having written something. Whereas if you just always let your phone just control you, like, oh, I'll just give you some things to do, then you'll never like get to like the success. But also much bigger things, like, stuff. It's yeah, it's a good
Yeah,
concept, I think.
it is. It's like getting back to basics. It's like this is
Mm,
a very handy tool. I mean, I appreciate how easy it makes it for me to travel from one place to the next, right? I don't have to think. I can just plug it in and then a little thing tells me where to turn left, turn right, go over here. And I don't have to
mm,
look, I don't have to pull a big map out, and like chart the course and have a navigator. And this is how we used to do it in my day when I
mm.
was a kid and we take car trips. My mom would have the map and my dad would, be driving and
Yeah, yeah.
be tracking like where we are, like, and I'd have to switch roles and I'd get up there with the map and tell my dad, oh no, it's 2 more miles until this spot, or like look for this highway. We
Mm.
did it with a
Yeah, I
map,
remember.
you know and now there's no map. It's all on the phone, and just it's so much easier, it's more convenient. And we're missing out on the adventure. We're missing out on the adventure part
Mm.
of, right,
Yeah, yeah,
facing the thing that we don't know what's going to happen next.
definitely. Yeah, there's a lot of. I mean, it's annoying because on any given moment, it's like, well, I'll choose just getting to the thing quickly, but there's a lot of things you do miss out on. So, as in when I went around America, at one point I was in California. I was trying to find this organic farm to do some like working, like woofing. You can do working on an organic farm thing. And I was like near the border of Mexico, and I got quite lost in this really sort of shady area of like lots of kind of just scary looking people. But it made me, because I was lost, like go and ask people where the hell this was, and no one knew what was going on. And I eventually knocked on this one door, and like these like clearly proper drug dealers sort of opened the door, and they had no idea what I was trying to find. And I'm like, yeah, but then and they're like, mate, it's really dangerous here. You should stay with us. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll do that because I wasn't going to get anywhere. So what was going to happen was I was going to like waste my time and end up sleeping in my car. I was like, I guess I'll see what life is like as a drug dealer. And I ended up staying the night with these drug dealers and like asking them about like how they ended up in the USA, and they'd sort of been arrested a few times or on like their third strike and stuff, and just learning about like what their family were like back at home in Mexico, and had like a really interesting time, and also got quite high and had a made some good friends. And it was completely safe and fun. Although I mean, I wouldn't recommend just trying to stay with drug dealers out of principle, but it was like it was so much better than I would have had just sort of doing the thing that was on my like itinerary, which is the only thing I'd planned for. So it gives you the option to have completely different experiences that you wouldn't even expect, kind of thing.
Yeah, things that, yeah, other people would totally avoid because they'd be like, "Oh, I'm scared of that." I don't
Mm,
I don't want to be in a shady place with people that could hurt me. And then here you just knocked on the door, like, "Hi, I'm a person, you're a person." Like,
mm,
what are we going to do together? So, this another thing that people are really afraid of course, is this coronavirus thing. And by the time this airs, hopefully we're on the other side of it. Of course, we can't say, we're making predictions. But
yeah.
like, what are some of the things that you notice already that it's revealing? Because I believe as a teacher, and you and I talked about it, like this is a teacher, as a teacher for
Mm.
humanity. So what are some things that you think we're learning from this?
Um, well, I think it's been quite clear, and there's so many things that people say that are impossible, kind of like, or that they can't do things, and yet so many things that you would never think could happen are happening. So you'd never think that a country would close their borders unless you're talking about North Korea, kind of thing. You'd never think that everyone in the country would be told to stay at home. And these things have all kind of just happened very quickly. You never think that like the government here in the UK would stop most companies from doing anything and just pay all their wages. And there's so many things that can suddenly just happen instantly. And you're like, you sort of have this narrow view of the world, of this is how it works. And it's clearly not right. And like all of the rules that exist in the world are just made up, and it becomes a lot more obvious. As in, the only real laws that exist are the laws of nature, and people have lost touch with that. And like everything that we know about society has just been made up by like the people before us, and all the rules that we have, all like our nations are just completely made up things. And like the virus doesn't really care about those things. It understands, well, it doesn't understand anything, but it happens to work with our species, and so it treats us as a species. If you're a human, you're a human as far as it's concerned. And like we have this whole like concept that like some humans belong to different nations, and some work in different businesses, and some are rich and some are poor. But like the virus doesn't really care about that. It just affects humans, and so it's affecting us as a whole species. And we're kind of running around with all our different concepts in our head and not really sort of doing the correct things, and need to sort of actually tackle the problem as a species together rather than with all our different concepts. So I think it's quite useful to recognize that we are just one species on the planet. And so I think it will be useful for the other problems that we're causing in terms of like global warming and other stuff to kind of realize these things. So there's potentially some good that comes out of it, although it's obviously going to be a very testing period for a lot of people. And it's certainly testing different ways that we do run things in terms of our democracies. And like China has thus far done a good job of like controlling it in some of the Asian countries like Singapore that have a better concept of the risks from pandemics and a better policy of like obeying things, whereas America kind of you're very liberal, and
Yeah, they're
thus
not doing what they're
it's
told,
kind of
are we?
exploded a lot more in your country.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, you can kind of see where it's interesting because you kind of want societies to be very liberal and free, but then you realize we need to have this better like overdriving sort of thing that we're working towards, and sort of rules that actually help us, because any one person does the things that's right for them, but then like as a whole it's not so good. In the same way with like panic buying kind of thing, anyone panic buying is making the complete logical decision because we've been given a bunch of scary news, and the thing to sort of make you feel safe is to buy some more stuff. But if everyone does it, then you cause a problem. Whereas if everyone kind of was set like, okay, you're going to get exactly the food you need for the week on a Tuesday, and this person's going to get it on a Wednesday, like it would all be fine if it kind of ran. And so this is an interesting question of like what freedoms we should have and what we need. And then also just in terms of consumption and this kind of stuff, like most people's jobs that have been put on hold is because they do something that isn't useful for humanity. And so most of us have realized that our jobs are kind of pointless. And like there's very few things that are actually essential and important right now. And everyone else is just doing something that's kind of pointless. And you're like, wow, so most humans have a pointless job, and then we're just here to like entertain each other with pointless stuff. And you're like kind of a bit profound and a bit of a lesson of what is most important. um those are a few things that
Yeah, well, there's Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
And
It's
we're at
definitely
the
rooted
bottom
those.
right now. We're in the scarcity at the bottom rung right now because we're in survival, you
Yeah,
know.
for each other, family.
Hmm. Yeah, but as we move up the pyramid, those things become really important. And isn't it interesting because right now, when everybody's sequestered at home,
Mm,
people are listening to more podcasts
yeah.
because they want to know what to do or what to make of this thing. How do I handle myself? How do I cope with my life? How do I cope with my job being lost? How do I cope with the realization of being, after spending like 3-4 months quarantined with my spouse that, oh, this isn't
Mm,
working out so well? You know, I mean,
yeah, it's
like there's a lot of things that could be coming up during this time of
definitely.
reckoning. Like, okay, so this is the cool thing, Sam. So when I channeled my book, The Second Wave last year, and I wrote all of this stuff, I just channeled all this information. And then I've been reviewing some of it lately, and all the things I just was saying out of my mouth before, and I'm like, whoa, now it's totally making sense. Because I
Mm,
saw this coming for 2020, but I didn't see it coming. I didn't really know how it was going to play out, but I knew that 2020 was a year of big reckoning. It was a reckoning. And I was like, oh, I kept saying, oh, it's a reckoning, and all this kind of stuff. And now I'm like, whoa, that's what it means, is that we basically got put on timeout Every human across the whole planet got put on timeout to
Mm.
have a reckoning of their own lives.
Yeah.
Is this working for you or not? Is this what you want for yourself or not? And does our infrastructure even work? If one thing stops, we just saw how everything fell apart. People's lives just got decimated because we had to stay home. It's crazy. We have a
Mm.
lot to think about, don't we, Sam?
Yeah, yeah. It's super interesting, like kind of experiment to just observe and be a part of it all at the same time. And it's pretty fascinating in terms of if you think about like an engineer when they want to build something, they try and take something apart first to sort of see how it works, to then put it back together. And we've watched like society and economies just completely fall apart, and you can kind of see each element for what it is and what its role is and why it's there and what it does and why it broke, and then work out like if we chose to how to put it back together in a better way, kind of thing would be good. Um, but we'll see. And then also just for people on the personal level, like it's quite a testing period, as you said. So maybe if you are in a marriage that perhaps wasn't to be in the long term, it could become obvious. Or if you have been having issues, you maybe will solve them, and like it kind of takes going through like some adversity to deal with your problems, kind of thing, rather than just sort of ignoring them for more years, which
Yeah,
is
that
nice.
decision point, instead of like using your phone again to figure out if you
Mm,
want to, distract from this problem and play your little game. People play their little games on here. I see people
yeah,
playing the little games and they do da 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 da. And I'm like, I never play those games on the phone. But I see people
yeah, I've
hunched
never had a
over
game.
like playing the little games.
Yeah, yeah. There's can't remember his name. Interviewed a cool guy called Mike. I can't remember his surname, but he calls people sheeple who use their phones too much, like sheep people that just sort of spend their lives on like Facebook and games and things. And it's kind of rude, but it's sort of you get what he's getting at, as in like people just herded around by their devices as opposed to having control of their life. So
Well, and that is
yeah,
basically what we've been talking about this entire time. In this
mm,
whole broadcast, everything we've talked about is like, can you hang out in the gap of discomfort and do the
mm,
thing you're afraid of and just go push through that feeling to the other side where there's a huge gift awaiting you? Or are you going to pick up your phone and distract from it?
pretty much.
Pretty much, that's the lesson.
Mm, yeah, coronavirus stuff kind of doesn't quite relate. Well, that certainly does relate to technologies, and you've got this potentially 3 month, potentially longer period where you have a lot more time to yourself. Do you distract yourself that whole time and never actually do something useful, or do you sit down and go, "Hey, I've always wanted to write a book, or I've always wanted to do this thing," and do you build some useful habits? Like in 3 months, you could learn to play guitar. You could do so many useful things, or like read a lot of books, or spend a lot of time writing letters to your friends and actually reconnect with them or things in like a deeper level. And so many things you could do, which if you're just on your phone the whole time, you'll never get around to if you just
Or you could rack
consciously
up a
do it.
lot of points in your favorite game.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So if are we here to entertain each other, or are we here to learn and grow and expand our understanding of life and consciousness? That's the question.
100%.
Yeah.
That's what you're here
So
for.
I think I'm here for learning and growing and expanding my consciousness. I guess everybody gets to choose though. Maybe they want to be the world champion winner in whatever online game there is. I'm not even cool enough to know what the names of them are. So
Candy Crush,
Candy
Angry Birds.
Crush,
Everyone's
yeah,
heard of
there's
those.
one. That's right. I've heard that name. Candy
Yeah.
Crush all-time winner. That's what I did with my life on Earth. I became the Candy Crush winner.
Mm.
So I think
Pretty sure you had a bit of a celebrity if you were the Candy Crush winner, but
yeah,
anyway.
would be a huge celebrity.
Mm.
Well, I think I would advocate for something a little more expanded from that view, something a little more meaningful, potentially,
For sure.
like a trip to across the world without any plan, like Sam is taking here.
Yeah, if you, yeah. It's good.
Yeah,
I would recommend it. It's a hard one to explain to your mum, but
yeah,
when she come back, she's always impressed. But like,
yeah.
she's like, "What are you
She's
doing? This
still
is an awful
alive.
idea." Yeah.
So tell everybody about your podcast and your latest venture and how they can get in touch with you.
I do enjoy a nice letter, but I'm not sure I have my physical address somewhere. If you search my business, I guess you can probably find it somehow. But anyway, my podcast. So I run the Growth Mindset podcast where I interview happy people, as we've mentioned, and also some really successful people like the founders of Skype and a few other billionaires and stuff. I also interviewed a hitman, which is a long story, but very interesting. That was weird. He wasn't the happiest person, it turns out.
No.
But it was very interesting, so I went for it. But yeah, generally just go for the stories of people's lives and understand how they went from being like a normal person, and because you're born with kind of nothing really, and then how you become like a super smart or someone that does something, or how you become super happy, and what that journey's like, and the decisions you need to make and the things you need to do. And so yeah, we learn a lot about growth and mindsets, and it's kind of fun. I've also just started a podcast kind of on coronavirus, but less so much on like specific news and number of people dying and scary things. And there is no scary music and like horrible things. It's mainly like looking more at like what the potential things are and what we can learn about it from the economy and where things are going in the long run and how we could reshape the universe after this, well, the planet at least, and thinking about things as more of a species. So that's a fun podcast. It's called The Coronavirus Effect. And my business is called Syncify, which is an app for people who listen to podcasts and audiobooks to let you, instead of where I just have conversations with myself, it lets you have conversations with other people. So you can listen to a podcast at the same time as someone else, or within like the same day or two. So if you have a friend that listens to a podcast that you like, when they listen to one of the ones that you know that you like, it'll go to the top of your playlist. So just after they've listened, you'll listen when you're next in the gym kind of thing. So by the time you finish your day, you both listen to the same one, and so you can like talk about the same thing. And so you actually learn what other people learn from the podcast, and you just learn a lot more by talking about these things, and you have more stuff to talk about if you're with your partner or people that you're in business with kind of thing. You're like on the same page. So I just find you get a lot more from talking to people with things. So I run another podcast, which is all about books, called the Wiser Than Yesterday podcast. And so I read a book a week with a friend, and then we talk about it. But I've learned so much more by doing that and having the process where I digest what I've learned from a book with someone else and seeing what they've learned. And I get 5 times more from the process of doing that with my friend than I do just reading a book by myself. And so the app that I'm building to let you do that with other people a lot more easily is just super useful for that, essentially. So quite a few things. And getting in touch, I guess, Sam Jam Snaps on Instagram, or searching any of those podcast names, and you can use the contact form.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Well, it's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed our conversation and hearing about your adventures and hearing your perspectives on things. I think it's really great to hear, you're getting back to nature sort of message and getting out of the technology and at least having some space from it to explore your own thoughts and your own feelings and
healthy balance.
The world around you. Yeah, healthy balance. I love that. So, well, thanks for being on the show. And you guys out there, please give us a 5-star rating on iTunes or wherever you find it. Like and share it out, because, the engines are always paying attention to if we're going to get feedback or not, so that's an important indicator of whether it was useful listening to this broadcast. So please give us a good rating so we can get out there some more. And
Carrie has mentioned she doesn't care about these things, so you could not bother.
You could. Well, I want people to hear it. That's the only reason why.
But I was in like.
That's my goal, is to help
promote
people.
kindness, acts of kindness. Perhaps you could do your act of kindness now by giving a good rating, because it would make Carrie happy. Let's be honest.
Yeah, it would make me happy.
Everyone likes one.
It does make me happy, because that way more people are hearing it, and that's good, right?
I'll be leaving a review.
Yeah, so we need more positive. We need more positive messages in the world. That's what I think.
Definitely, especially right now.
Yeah, more joy, more love.
Going out.
Yeah. So less doom, doom, doom. Doom scenarios and more like joy, right?
100%. Yeah. In my podcast, I play like light, amusing jazz every time someone starts talking about death in the background. It just helps.
You just flip it on.
Yeah. It's really good. Because the news is so like it just makes you so anxious when you're like listening to it, and there's like, more people are dying, and you're like, oh my god, this is
So
awful. The world is ending, and like if you just have some like silly music in the background, you're like, so people did die, but it's okay. And then like,
people died, but it's life goes on. And
yeah,
you know, we have compassion for everything, of course, but then with this bigger perspective you and I were talking about, which is that we're all souls and bodies. So
mm,
you'll get another body. It'll be all right. That's what my guides keep telling me. Because I had fears. I was like, what happens if I die? What happens if I go out and I share these messages and somebody tries to kill me? What if I, and my guides were like, Carrie, if that happens, you'll get another body. Like, okay.
sweet,
But I like this one. And they're like, yes,
yeah,
you've liked every single one so far.
good
Okay.
times.
Yeah. We like them all. So,
Mm.
all right. Awesome. So we're going to get kisses. You want to help me kiss everybody?
Say what?
I'm going to give kisses out to everybody. So here we go. You can join me or not. Here they come,
Okay,
everybody. I know you're waiting on the energy kisses. Here they come. And these are totally safe, germ-free kisses because they're just coming over the energy.
yeah, virtual kisses.
Here they come. Safe
What we're gonna
kisses.
have to be doing for a while anyway. Get
Practice
used
with
to it.
me. This is how you can give kisses.
Okay, one more.
Love you guys. We'll see you next time on Soul Nectar. Bye for now.